So, what films or like productions or plays have you been in?
Oh, good heavens. Oh, dear. So I've done so many. Let's take films first of all,
Okay.
and then perhaps do theatre,
Mhm.
and then do TV. Yes? Is that the right way around for you?
Yeah.
The very first job I ever did was a film called French Lieutenant's Woman, which was with Meryl Streep and Jeremy Irons. It was my very first job, and it was based on a book, a very well-known book called The French Lieutenant's Woman, and it was the part of a girl called Mary, and Mary is quite an important part in the book, although lesser in the film. She's a maid and she has a relationship with the lead man's butler. So that was my very first job, and it was based in we filmed in Dorset, and then the other films I've done. Let me see. I've done a film called Four Weddings and a Funeral, which I played a small part in that, but I played one of Hugh Grant's ex-girlfriends. I was in another film called Chunky Monkey, where I had to play Julie Andrews impersonator in The Sound of Music. I did a French film called Ne quittez pas, which is the equivalent of saying, can you hold on please? And for that I had to be a woman who speaks fluent French. So although I wasn't actually playing a French woman, I had to be at least sound very fluent. And I actually filmed that in Lyon and Paris. So it was quite hard because the whole crew was French. I was the only English speaker. So I had to get some of the direction in French as well. Really difficult. That's one of the hardest jobs, but one of the most enjoyable jobs I think I've ever done. It was a huge challenge, and actually it was never shown in England, but I've got subtitles when I'm speaking English in French. So it's really funny. And what others? Oh yeah. Okay, now move slightly to TV films. TV films. I played another bilingual role, the absolute lead role in every single scene, in a film with Edward Fox called They Never Slept, and it was set during the Second World War, and it was literally about somebody who's supposed to be a driver who ends up a volunteer driver who ends up sort of working 24/7, hence the title They Never Slept. That was hugely enjoyable as well. Again, it was learning lots of French. Bizarre, isn't it? I'm actually not fluent in French, but I can now sound as though I'm fluent in French with a lot of practice. And then there's another film for TV called Precious Bane. Again, that was based on a book called Precious Bane. I can't remember who the author was now. And I had to play a very downtrodden woman, young woman, and who ends up killing herself because she's so lovesick, and ends up being a ghost in the middle of a river. So I had to appear like an apparition in the middle of a river, which was not good fun, I can tell you, with a wetsuit and everything. And what other things have I done? This is just off the top of my head now. A series called Brass, which ran for ages. We did 3 series of it, where I had to play a rather posh girl. It was a comedy series, but it was the first of its kind, and we're talking late 80s, early 90s now. So now we have a lot more comedy that was like that. Then there was another series called Castles, which was a soap opera, one of the least successful soap operas that the BBC have ever done after EastEnders. It was a sort of a bit like EastEnders, except it was a kind of middle class kind of version of EastEnders. But obviously the public didn't like it. We think we did 30 episodes, and then it never. And I had to play an actress in that, which was great fun. I really enjoyed that. There's another series called Drummonds, which again that was ages ago. I've done, what else have I done? Theatre productions. Mostly the theatre I've done has either been in the West End or it's been at the National, or I've done quite a lot of work at the Royal Exchange in Manchester. So I don't know whether you want to find out more about that, or is that enough? Is that enough? Have I given you enough? Do you want
yeah,
more?
That's really good, thanks.
What did you find the most difficult when you were rehearsing and performing your productions, kind of, and acting in them?
The most difficult thing about rehearsing and performing, each job has its own different challenge. As I was saying, that some of the jobs that I've done where I've had to be bilingual, that's been a really difficult task because I've always had a coach with me, and to get the absolute pronunciations correct, that's been very difficult. And equally, when you film, you can get scene changes happen every night. So you've already pre-learnt something, and then the night before they've changed the scene. Now, if you've learnt something in French, really absolutely by rote, and then they suddenly change it the night before, and you've got to add maybe some other sentences and make it sound as though you're bilingual, that's really hard. That was really hard. And I remember one night for that French film, I was up till 4 a.m, unlearning something and relearning something. So that was really difficult. From the point of view of theatre, if you're touring something, the difficulty is actually the practicalities of things, is getting your, what they call digs. It's getting your hotel accommodation, or if you're staying with friends of the theatre, excuse me, it's getting all of that. So you might have a 6-month tour ahead of you, and you've really got to book all of those venues up every week for 6 months. That's so far as the rehearsing's concerned and the performing. If you're touring, it's that. For something like and I suppose like any job, it's understanding what the director wants. So every director has their own style. So that's always a challenge.
What or who inspired you to become an actress?
Well, my own mother was an actress. She doesn't act anymore, but when I was growing up, she used to work on radio a lot. She was part of what they call the BBC Repertory Company, which I think they still have a skeleton version of. But in those days, back in the the 60s and 70s, and even the 80s, they had quite a large repertory company on radio. And every day or every week she'd come back and bring scripts back, and I remember getting hold of these scripts and thinking, I actually really understand how to do this. I really enjoy this. So it wasn't anybody in particular. It was just the notion of having these scripts around in the house, and it was something that I felt immediately in tune with, I suppose.
Did you ever take acting classes, and if so, did it help at all?
When I was growing up, I didn't take acting classes, but when I was a child, I had an agent and I did a few commercials. When I was growing up, there are many more theatre clubs now than when I was growing up. But what I did do when I was 16, I auditioned for the Central School of Speech and Drama, because I knew that they could take you at 16. And there were only 2 colleges at that time that did it. It was Guildhall and Central. Central I completely fell in love with at 16, and they said to me that I was too young, that they would hold a place open for me the following year, and that's what happened. So I actually started very, very young. But I didn't have classes, like Lambda classes or anything like that. No, I didn't. But I would say to people now, do it. I wouldn't say not.
Was it hard to find work?
I was very fortunate at the very beginning of my career. I had a lot of success and I got jobs really, really easily. As I got older and after I had children, work becomes thinner on the ground, and it is very much a young person's profession, much more than it ever was. So it has become harder over the years, definitely. So the minute you sort of hit middle age, especially as a woman, there are less parts. So yes, from that point of view.
What was your first big acting break and how old were you?
That was definitely The French Lieutenant's Woman, and I would have been 18, because what happened to me was that, so having waited a year to get into Central, I go to Central, and then after a year and a half, to cut a long story short, I was offered the role in The French Lieutenant's Woman. And it was a major, major film that was being made, and it was because I sent a photograph in. I saw that they were casting it, and I sent a photograph in, and they said, the casting director said at that point, she said, "Oh, you're wrong for this part, but I think you'd be right for this other part that they're casting. I'll send the photograph and your CV onto this other casting director." And so that's how that happened. But I had to leave Central because they wouldn't accept me back, so I had to leave. So I had to make the decision: do I stay, or do I leave? And I left. But actually, after that, I then went on almost immediately into the National Theatre, the Royal National Theatre, and played leads there. And in fact, I was the youngest lead on the Olivier Theatre at that point. So.
How did it feel to work with like big actors such as like Hugh Grant, and what was the feeling?
The very first group of actors that I worked with who were really famous was Meryl Streep and Jeremy Irons, and on my very first day of filming, this will give you an idea of what it feels like, I was totally awestruck, and I was very, very nervous my very first day, and all I had to do for the first shot ever in my professional life was literally, the camera was behind me, and all I had to do was open the door to Jeremy Irons and curtsy. That's all I had to do, right? So we're on take, whatever it is, maybe 4 or 5, and I open the door bangs the front of my head, and I'm actually seeing stars. I'm literally seeing stars. And Jeremy Irons looks at me, and then the scene finishes, and I'm too shy to say, "I've just banged myself out." You know, it's a miracle I'm still standing, but I'm too shy to say anything. So we go again, and Jeremy Irons says to me, he said, "It would be really nice if I could get, if you could react a bit more to me." And I wanted to say to him, "But you don't understand, I've just knocked myself out, I can't react." But anyway, lo and behold, the one that they use in the final edit, the shot that they use, is the one where I'm actually knocked myself out. And if you look very carefully, you can actually see the back of my head going back. So that's how I felt. As you get older and you mix with other people, and you get more used to it, I absolutely promise you, it means nothing to me now. It means nothing to me now. It's how you get on with people, whether they're famous, whether they're not. That's the most important thing. You can get on with somebody who has a very small part. You get on somebody who has a massive part. Oh yes, of course, yeah, Kevin Spacey. I was in a show at the Old Vic with him called Iceman Cometh, and he is the most extraordinary actor. He is absolutely amazing on stage, and huge respect. But I didn't really get on with him that much. I just didn't have the same things in common. Just one of those things. But as an actor, I respect him massively. So it really depends. Really depends.
Why did you choose Emily Morgan as your stage name?
Because in those days, you had to be a member of Equity, which is the actors union, and you could only have a unique name. You couldn't have the name as anybody else, and there was already a Jenny Morgan, and I tried keeping J, as I call I tried Janine Morgan, I can't remember now, lots of different other Jane Morgan, and every other J name I could think of was already taken, and Emily had been a nickname at Central. So in my last resort, I said, well, what about Emily Morgan? And that was the one that came back. So that's how.
Do you have any regrets to do with your career, like something you would have done or something that you wouldn't have done?
Yes, I do. I would have. Alan Ayckbourn is a very well-known contemporary playwright, and he's got his own theatre in Scarborough, and he does great plays. And I auditioned for him for a lead role in one of his new plays for the West End, and he offered it to me, and it was great, and I was very excited about it. And then my agent said to me, it's not quite the job we thought it was. You've got to do a season at Scarborough first. You've got to do 6 months to 8, no, is it 6 months or 8 months at Scarborough first? And I said, but hang on a minute, that's really not fair, because I've auditioned to be in the West End. I want to be in London now. I don't want to, because I've just been all over the place. And so, to cut a long story short, they said, it's not quite West End, they're trying it out at Scarborough first, and then they're hoping it's going to come into the West End. And in the end I turned it down. And then, I can't remember, but something similar happened again with him, and now he says, I'll never offer Emily Morgan anything ever again. But I wish I'd sort of been a little bit more flexible back then, and I wish I'd sort of said to myself, it's only for 6 months, it's only for 8 months, you'll be home, but I wasn't. I was very stuck on the idea of remaining in the southeast.
What advice would you give to young people who would like to become an actor or an actress?
These days, I would say, get the best degree you can in anything. Don't necessarily focus on drama or theatre studies or whatever. Get the best degree you can in anything, and use your time at university to study acting. That's what I would say now, because it's such a very different world, and it's the profession is very different to what it was 30 years ago, and I think that you have to be very flexible in how you earn your money, and so that's the one bit of advice I would say.
What are the best and worst parts of becoming an actress?
The best and worst parts of becoming an actress?
Yeah.
That's a very interesting question. What are the best and the worst parts of becoming an actress? I think the toughest bit is for me, I can only speak for myself, but I suspect a lot of other people would understand that when you first start drama college or wherever it is, or university, you have to remember, let me put this into context. When I started, I applied for Central School of Speech and Drama. There were 20 places for boys, and there were 8 places for girls, and there were about 2,000 applicants. So all the 8 girls that were chosen every year had come from all over the country, and each one of us girls were all the best in our little environment, wherever we had come from. And suddenly you're all put together, and you're no longer the best, because there are people who are better than you. And so you have to be able to be, you have to you either sink or swim with that, basically, because it's very difficult. So it's to realise there's always going to be somebody who's going to be better than you. That was a very difficult sort of piece of learning to do. And so there was that, and also that continues into the profession. You've really got to be very competitive, and I'm not very good at that. I kind of slightly bow out of it a bit. So I think that's the hardest bit. The best bit is always when you first get offered a really good job. That's always the best bit. That's very exciting. Before you start rehearsals, just when you've been offered the job, you've got good money, and that's always the best bit.
Did anyone ever tell you that you'd not be able to become an actress?
No. No, I remember at school, I went to Coombe Bank when it was a convent, and I remember the headmistress who was a nun, when we had our sort of final interview after GCSEs, I remember her saying, so Jenny, what are you intending to do? And I said, I'm going to be an actress. And I remember her saying, you're going to be, you don't know whether you'll make it yet, And I said, no, I'm going to be an actress. So, but apart from that, no, I think it was just, I just wanted to do it, and that was it. Couldn't imagine myself doing anything. And it was partly actually because I think I was so dreadful at everything else, actually. Unlike you clever girls, I couldn't do maths, I couldn't do anything. I mean, I could act, but that was about it.
Thanks.
What do you do now, and do you have any plans for the future?
Well, that's an interesting question, because 4 years ago, I was asked by the headmaster of Beechwood School to run speech and drama clubs in the prep school. So I started doing that, and I started off with about 18 children, and I thought, oh, that's easy, I'll just do a couple of clubs a week, and but now it kept getting more and more and more, and I've got 84 children, which is half of the prep school doing speech and drama. And then they asked me whether I would do productions there every year. So I did one production, and then I thought, oh God, I just don't know whether I like the look of the plays for these children. I'm going to adapt my own. So the last few years I've done my own adaptations of Treasure Island and The Firebird now. So it's kind of going off in a slightly different direction, but I'm not going to be there forever. I've got ideas of going to Canada, because I've got a friend who's an agent out there, so she's asked me whether I would go out there, so that will be the next thing, but not for a couple of years yet.
This is the last question now, but what are some key features that every actor or actress should have?
Key features?
Yeah.
A good speaking voice. A good voice. A good voice will help in not just in acting, but in every situation. So that's one of the things. Determination. What else? Key features, did you say?
Yeah.
Key features. Yeah, determination. My uncle used to say, never take no for an answer. And there's certainly a bit of that as well. Do you both want to be actors?
Well, I hope to be almost like director. I want to study theatre studies and directing.
What sort of theatre, or are you just keeping everything open for
Yeah, just keeping.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I think, I'm not really sure what I want to be, but I'd quite like to be like a drama teacher.
Okay.
I'm quite interested in that.
So theatre is something that really interests you.
Yeah.
So both of you. So you could both end up doing a degree somewhere, and then I mean, if you want to be, I don't know, it's different because you could also go into film school, but film school, of course, usually happens after you've done a degree course. That's very interesting. Yeah, determination, and also, I mean, you know, if you don't have passion for it, you know, then there's really not much. There's not much point. I mean, I absolutely, whether I'm directing it, teaching it, or performing it, I love it. I just love it. It's always a challenge. So you've got to have passion. If you don't have passion, then, you know, forget it really.
Yeah.
So, I think, yeah, that's probably. I'm just thinking of whether there's anything else. Yeah. It's a straight. The other thing, you've got to have a lot of energy because it's exhausting. I mean, theatre is in particular. I mean, especially in the West End. And I did a musical in the West End for 10 months, playing a lead. It was a Leonard Bernstein musical, and I was very lucky actually because he came over to see it. So before he died, Leonard Bernstein, if you don't know, he wrote West Side Story. He did the music. So I mean, you know, the gods, so far as musicals concerned, that is one of the best musicals ever written. So, but it's exhausting doing West End. And I remember a friend of mine said to me after I'd given birth to twins, he said, you know, how does it compare? You know, you must be absolutely shattered. And I said, you know, actually, it's more exhausting opening up in the West End show, which it is. It's much more exhausting because there's no let up. You know, it's constant.
Yeah.
So energy, lots of energy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, my
Time.
pleasure. I hope you get all the information that you need from that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.